mid-spring and a very warm, sunny, beautiful day here in the Pacific Northwest, and I'm at Magnuson Park for my annual spring hawthorn harvest, and I wanted to take you along to show you a little bit about what's cool about these flowers and some of the wonderful things that hawthorn can help support us and why everyone should love this heart-supportive herb. This is our beautiful hawthorn. It's in the genus Crataegus and in the rose family. If you've driven along the highways this time of year, you've probably seen large trees covered in these white flowers, and most likely you're seeing hawthorn. It's technically a shrub, but it can grow quite large and look like a tree. Hawthorn has, like all plants in the rose family, has 5 petals. It can range from white to more pink. You can kind of see the pink hue on these ones. It has these leaves that look a little bit like oak leaves. They're really deeply serrated and light green. A unique thing about the hawthorns is that as the pollen matures, it changes color. So over here you can see these ones have pink pollen, and then the ones surrounding it have more of a brown pollen. So as the pollen matures, it changes from that pink to brown color, and so that's a really helpful way to know when is the best time to harvest the plants. Whenever you're harvesting the aerial parts of a plant, especially when you're focused on the flowers, your goal is to harvest them before the insects and other pollinators get to them, because as the plant is trying to attract those pollinators, it's pushing all those medicines and the therapeutic compounds that we're looking for when we're making medicine out into the leaves and flowers. So if you're able to harvest it before that time, our medicine is going to be the strongest. So when you're harvesting, if you can find a bunch full of the flowers with the pink pollen, or even like over here, bunches with just little buds, a mix of buds and pink pollen, that is going to be your strongest medicine. Hawthorn is an interesting plant because there's 2 harvests throughout the year. There's the spring harvest, when we harvest the flowers, the leaves, and all the little twiggy bits. And then the fall harvest, when we're focused on the berries or the haws. Here you can see some of the berries or haws left over from last year. They turn a bright to dark red in the fall, and the time to harvest them is usually around November, before the birds get to them. They're rich in antioxidants and have a lot of the same properties as the flowers and leaves that we harvest in the spring, but have the additional benefit of being a very food-like plant. People make things like ketchup and chutneys and jams and wine and all sorts of fun things with these haws. They're like tiny, mealy little apples, really not that delicious, but a pretty good ingredient if you add some other things in. We can't talk about hawthorn without talking about the thorns. So here's a close-up of the range of what the thorns in hawthorn can look like. They can range from pretty small, like this one, to even kind of teeny tiny here and here, to really big. Look how big that thorn is. So when we do our spring harvest, we're looking for bunches like this that have our nice little pink pollen, and then we just clip off that whole little bundle. Whoops. Like that. And it drops right into our basket. The whole little bundle of the leaves, the little twiggy bits, and the flowers. So what makes hawthorn such a wonderful plant to get to know? It's one of the gentlest yet strongest herbs for the heart. So it's a normalizer, which means that it's going to calm down excessive functions and kind of bolster weaker functions. So for example, if you have high blood pressure, hawthorn can help reduce your high blood pressure. If you have low blood pressure, it can help bring that up. It can support even mild to moderate heart disease. So things like angina or a history of myocardial infarctions, or peripheral edema, which is swelling in the extremities. It can do this by relaxing the blood vessels, by dilating the blood vessels that supply the actual heart muscles so that they can perform more optimally. It's a mild diuretic, which can help conditions such as edema, and can just help the fluid flow through the body better. It's really wonderful for all sorts of heart conditions. If you have any sort of heart disease, please speak with your provider before starting anything new in your routine. But that said, it's generally considered to be a supportive plant with lots of research around it, lots of research to show that it can support a healthy heart and a healthy cardiovascular system. A common issue in pregnancy that a lot of people deal with is hemorrhoids, and this is a plant that can be great for hemorrhoids. It has a compound called rutin, which some people buy over the counter to help with their hemorrhoids, and by taking Hawthorn, you're getting that rutin in its whole form, along with all sorts of other compounds that can help prevent and possibly improve hemorrhoids that are already there. It's also a great plant for supporting heart issues that may come up with too much nervousness or anxiety. So if you're like me and you get extreme heart palpitations when you've had too much caffeine or you're anxious, this can be a plant that can help normalize that and help bring the heart rhythm back to normal. It's also a great plant for supporting grief, so that emotional side of the heart. It can pair really well with herbs like rose or motherwort to help bring some comfort and support the grieving process. Hawthorn is a plant that really does its work slowly and over time, which is really the case with a lot of herbs. Unlike medications, you're not going to see an instant change most of the time. But Hawthorn's one you want to take for weeks or months. But then you are going to, most people will see some long-term benefit. So for example, say you've been dealing with edema, swelling in your extremities. If you take your Hawthorn regularly over a few months and you start noticing benefit, you're not going to go back to where you were if you decrease that dose or if you stop taking it. Hawthorn really is a quite versatile plant in terms of how you take it. It's great to make preparations from it fresh or dried, meaning that, say, if you're making a tincture, you can put it in your alcohol, just these fresh flowers and aerial parts once you get home, or you can dry it first or buy it dried and then make a tincture. You can make it into tea. You can infuse it into vinegar to put on salad dressings or to mix with honey if you like that taste. If you're taking Hawthorn as a tincture, taking one full dropperful 2 or 3 times a day is probably a good place to start for most people. If you're making a water-based infusion, you can probably take 2 teaspoons that you pour a cup of boiling water over and steep for about 10 minutes. You could take that 2 or 3 times a day as well. Hawthorn is generally considered a very safe plant for most people, but if you have severe heart or kidney disease, you definitely want to speak with a provider before introducing Hawthorn into your regimens. Okay, here is today's Hawthorn harvest. I think this is plenty. It's always a little hard to stop, but of course I don't want to overdo it. This I'm going to make mostly into tincture, probably 1 or 2 big quart jars of tincture. I'll cut these up maybe a little bit smaller, but mostly with flowers you just stick them right in the jar and cover them with 100 proof alcohol. This will last me the whole year, maybe a little bit more, we'll see. I'll come back here in the fall and make another batch of tincture and dehydration of the berries, the haws, and then I'll mix them together, but I like to make them separately. And I'll probably leave some of them separate just to experiment with. The flowers and leaves and berries have pretty similar properties. There's some slight differences, but mostly they can be used interchangeably, but I think it makes a more powerful medicine to eventually mix them together and get some of the spring energy and some of the fall energy and really just enjoy this beautiful heart supportive plant.